Hi and welcome. This is Homebody Rundown and I'm HR. And this video is going to be some meals and desserts that I've made over the fall. Nothing very creative here. It's a lot of things that I make some variation of quite often. There are 3 to 5 of us in the house, depending on if our 2 oldest boys are home on a break from college. 3 of us are pescatarians. That means we eat a vegetarian diet, but we include seafood, primarily fish. 2 of the kids do eat meat, but there really isn't much of that in this video. They're pretty good at making their own food, or I will meal prep a bunch of bacon or chicken and then put it in the freezer in small quantities and they can pull out what they want. Another thing to note is that we are not strict vegetarians, or pescatarians. There are a lot of things that can include animal products or be processed using animal products, and we are not really careful about all of that. Sometimes we have cheese that is not vegetarian. We use Worcestershire sauce, which has anchovies in it. Natural flavorings, who knows what's in there. So there are times when the food I'm making may look vegetarian, but when you look at the nitty-gritty, it may not actually be vegetarian. Today I'm making a soup using this vegetarian broth powder I ordered from Azure. The brand is Frontier. This is some milk that I mixed up from a whole milk powder. The flavorings and ingredients, this is heavily inspired by an Instant Pot recipe that I'll link down below. I am not making that, but I have in the past made this soup in an Instant Pot and it's fantastic. But today I am making this soup on the stovetop. I will make rice in the Instant Pot though. A couple of the kids are not going to eat this soup, so I like to make the rice separate so they can have rice. And then I'll just take some out and add it to the soup when I'm done. I was also rinsing off some black lentils. On the stove I have some white onion and oil, and I'll get that cooking. Mixed up a little bowl with all the seasonings and getting those into the pot. I also shredded up the last of the baby carrots in the refrigerator. Frozen veggies are mushrooms and kale. This is roasted garlic. I buy peeled garlic from Whole Foods and I roast it all at once and then put it in these little jars in the freezer. It's really handy. This is some broth that I mixed up. Let this simmer for about 20 minutes and then adding milk. And because I don't measure any ingredients, I do have to keep tasting it. It did not have nearly enough salt. I wasn't sure how the broth would be, and I needed a little more salt, so I added a bouillon cube. Now I'm looking for the bay leaves and getting those pulled out, and I mixed up a bit of cornstarch and water as a thickener. The brown rice is done, so I'm just going to get some out to add to my soup. Stirring that in, and then I'll let it simmer again for a few more minutes. This was fantastic. The flavors were excellent. And I really liked adding the black lentils into this. They're very hearty. They held up very well. Making chocolate chip cookies. I like to start gathering ingredients earlier in the day, and then eventually I have everything out and I can just get going on it in the afternoon. But first I needed to refill the chocolate chips. These are some mini white chocolate chips. I ordered these from Whole Foods. I think this was my first time getting these, and I was surprised at how tiny they were. These are Ghirardelli milk chocolate chips. I picked these up at Walmart. They are fairly pricey, but they're good. They are a little oversized though, so they look huge compared to these mini white chocolate chips. All right, can start the cookies now. This is some softened butter, the eggs, and sugars. Vanilla. We'll get this stuff mixed up. I forgot to add in the shortening. Usually I do that with all of those other ingredients. Okay, just realized I said chocolate chip cookies, but I am not making those. I am making oatmeal raisin cookies with chocolate chips. Adding in quick oats and regular oats, the salt, the rising agents, and cinnamon. I will put a recipe for oatmeal raisin cookies in the description that's very good. I make a modified version. I add the chocolate chips, obviously, but I also will put things like flaxseed in, ground flaxseed, and sometimes I substitute part of the white flour for whole wheat flour. As this was mixing, I was putting away ingredients. And I had youngest child come down to scoop these for me, which is such a big help. Got these out of the oven. They look great. And they tasted awesome. They're a little crispy on the outside, but the inside is still really soft. The white chocolate chips were so tiny, you just see little flecks of white. Going to make a vegetable soup. Sometimes I add rice to this just to make it more filling, but today I'm going to add elbow noodles, which is not something I usually do. I have some more shredded baby carrots, frozen peas. This is a white onion with some avocado oil or olive oil. I'm not sure which. So I'll let these veggies soften for a few minutes with the spices. This is a black pepper, onion powder, garlic powder mix. This is mushroom umami seasoning from Trader Joe's. Paprika, turmeric, and turmeric is going to give it a very orange or yellow-orange color. Oregano, and we'll just let that stuff heat for a little while. This is better than bouillon. It's vegetable, and more of that roasted garlic. Adding in water to make the broth, some frozen peas, and I opened a jar of kidney beans and got those rinsed and adding those in as well. It smells wonderful already, and adding in tomatoes. It needed more seasoning after I tasted it. This is the pasta. And in hindsight, I needed so much more broth. The pasta absorbed all of the liquid. But at this point, it still had broth, and I got my bowl and added some cheddar cheese to it. So it was very orange, but it was very delicious. But in the future, I know I need about twice as much broth if I want there to be any liquid after it cools. This is one of those prep things I do where I just baked a lot of frozen chicken and I am getting that divvied up, and some will go in the freezer for the kids in the future. I only make Chex Mix at the holidays at Christmas time. So I picked up a box of the 3 kinds of Chex cereal. This is some wood-fired garlic Kinder seasoning that I'm going to replace some of the seasoning salt with, just to try it out. It has a little more of a smoky flavor. So I'm adding the seasonings into the melted butter. This is some garlic powder, and then I also add onion powder. I'm loosely just following the recipe that is on the Chex Mix box or the Chex Cereal box. Adding Worcestershire sauce and giving this a stir. It doesn't incorporate great, but mixing it up a little before I pour it over the cereal. Measuring the cereal out. So this is corn, rice, and wheat Chex. This is a mix of roasted peanuts and cashews, and these are butter pretzels. I am not adding little toasted garlic breads or anything else. But I did add a little extra on the pretzels, so I added some more seasonings to this butter mix before I poured it over. And I make this in a roasting pan. Just getting this mixed, and it'll go into the oven, and you have to stir it every 15 minutes. Here's how it looks after a couple times of stirring, and here it is when it's done. Turned out great. I mean, I don't have a great sense of taste, so I could use more seasoning, but you don't want it to be too salty. Spent a little time in the kitchen on this morning doing some prep. I hard-boiled some eggs in the Instant Pot, diced some of those up, and mixed up a salad with some stuff that we just had in the refrigerator, like an open jar of olives and some peppers. I went ahead and diced them for the salad, diced them with some onions for lasagna later, and then cut some of the peppers into strips just for eating with hummus. To go with the salad, I got some bread out of the freezer. Usually it's end pieces of the bread loaves. I just cut it up into cubes, spraying it with avocado oil and drizzling over some olive oil. For seasonings, I do a mix of black pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, and then this right here is roasted garlic powder, which has a pretty strong flavor, and then kosher salt. I will just put this in the toaster oven on toast for a while, and then if it's not, done enough, I will turn on the air fry for just a minute, and I have to stay right by it because they will burn really quickly. Here's my salad. I like to add crushed red pepper flakes to mine, olive oil, some seasonings, the croutons, and then I had some balsamic glaze still in the refrigerator, so I added some of that. We don't usually have a lot of salad dressings in the refrigerator because we just don't go through them quickly enough. Making a peanut butter pie. So to do the crust, I'm using the food processor to really grind up these graham crackers. I wanted them to be fairly fine crumbs. I am just going to mix up the butter, sugar, and in this case I'm adding cinnamon. I have never done this on a peanut butter pie, but I thought I would try it. Future me can tell you that I did not care for it, but my husband couldn't even tell it was there. Getting everything blended together. And then I used this weird Pyrex. It's more like a cake pan because the sides are so straight. It's really old. I probably got it from my grandma or my great-grandma. And the problem is that the sides are not slanted very much. So this the crust wasn't strong enough to hold its shape when I baked it. I bake it in the oven for just a little while. These are peanut butter chips that I got at Trader Joe's. I thought that would be a nice thing to sprinkle over the top of a peanut butter pie. So I put them in this little mini food processor, and it took a lot of effort to get these things to chop. But that looks good enough. So the sides kind of fell down. You can see it here. But, I mean, it's fine. Making some whipped cream. This is heavy whipping cream, and I always use the KitchenAid. Well, almost always use the KitchenAid for this. In a pinch, I've used the food processor, but it does not work nearly as well. So I have the whisk on here, and I'm adding in some powdered sugar. I do not have a recipe, so I do have to periodically just be tasting this to see if it's sweet enough. Also have to add in vanilla. I'm using some fourfold vanilla for this. I order that from Azure Standard. So I tasted it, it wasn't sweet enough, so adding a little more powdered sugar, but I will make sure to close the lid on this powdered sugar. Well, I should have closed the lid. I did put the splash guard thing on because whenever I'm doing liquids in the KitchenAid, it tends to splatter out. Adding a little more vanilla and a little more sugar. And because this is going in a pie, I let it whip a little bit longer than if I was just using it to top a dessert, so it has a little more structure. Moved the whipped cream to a different bowl, and we'll reuse this mixer bowl to make the pie filling. This is softened cream cheese. Getting that whipped a little bit before I add in the peanut butter. This is just a creamy peanut butter. It is the Sam's Club brand, Members Mark. Powdered sugar. And if you want this to look nicer, it would be a good idea to sift the powdered sugar. There were still little lumps of powdered sugar in this, even after mixing. So instead of folding in all of the whipped cream, I do just use the mixer to do part of it, so I have less hand stirring to do. I just use a slow speed. But you can see here the attachment that I use cannot get all the way to the bottom, especially on something thick like peanut butter, so you do have to get in there with a spatula to mix it up at the end. Smoothing this down into the graham cracker crust and sprinkling those peanut butter chips over the top. I covered it and put it in the refrigerator for a few hours, and this is how it turned out. It did hold its shape really well, it set up well, and it tasted amazing. I think I would prefer to have more crust, so I need to add a few more graham crackers when I make it next time. So on recipes, I tend to print them out, the ones that I know I want to use or make again, and put them in these plastic sleeves in a binder. And then I just handwrite on notes of things I want to try next time. I'd like to think I would remember, but I don't. Real quick, didn't film much on this. I was scrambling up some tofu in oil. I'm going to make a quick stir fry kind of thing with leftovers. I have some chopped green onions. I'm going to use some of the peppers that I was going to save for lasagna. And then I had some spaghetti in the freezer and defrosted that. The boys brought home a lot of food from their refrigerator at college while they're home on Christmas break. And to use up some of that stuff, I'm going to make a lasagna because they had sauce and Parmesan cheese, cottage cheese, and a bunch of Baby Bell mozzarella cheeses. So I put those in the food processor and ground them up because I think they were pretty old. And I just wanted to make sure they got used up while they still tasted good. This is some eggs with the cottage cheese, Italian seasoning, salt, garlic pepper, or garlic powder, onion powder, black pepper, Parmesan cheese, and some of this shredded Baby Bells. I'm adding in one vegetarian sausage. I wasn't planning to add this in, and I don't always add a vegetarian meat product to a lasagna, but I know my husband and oldest child will appreciate that meaty flavor in there, and I already had them defrosted in the refrigerator. Vegetables are white onion, carrot that's been shredded up, red pepper. There wasn't much red pepper. I used most of it in another dish. Frozen spinach and frozen mushrooms that had defrosted in the refrigerator. Adding in some seasonings like salt, garlic powder, roasted garlic powder, and Italian seasoning. This is red pepper flakes and using some more of that roasted garlic from the freezer. Just letting this all cook for a while until the vegetables are soft. Had a few diced tomatoes that needed to be used up. This is some Costco marinara and Rayo's pasta sauce as well. Adding in more seasoning, including roasted garlic powder. In the bottom of the dish, I'm adding Rayo's pasta sauce and some of the sauce that I just mixed up. I also sprayed the pan with avocado oil. I'm just hoping that helps some of the cheese not get really burned on there. I get these pasta sheets at Whole Foods, and you do not have to pre-cook them. They can just go right into the lasagna. Some of that cheesy egg mixture and a layer of sauce. Another layer of the lasagna sheets, the rest of the cheese mixture, and some more sauce. I don't usually do a third layer on a lasagna, but I had so much sauce left that I went ahead and did a third layer. Plus this was the last of the lasagna sheets in the box, so I could just use them all up. I covered it with foil to bake in the oven, and I did not put the cheese on it yet because the cheese always sticks to the foil because I usually have it so close to the top of the pan. I'm using this thermometer mostly just to make sure or check how well done the pasta sheets are. This is the rest of that Baby Bell mozzarella that I ground up and some Parmesan cheese. So I'll put it back in the oven uncovered, and this is what it looked like. I don't really know how long I bake this for. I just make sure that those pasta sheets are done, and then I do check the internal temperature to make sure it's hot in the center of the center because there are raw eggs in it. It held together pretty well, and you can still see some layers in there. It tasted great. Now, we do eat this as leftovers. There'll be quite a bit left. And when I reheat it, sometimes I do add more pasta sauce just from a jar so that it's not dry. Last but not least, I'm making some California rolls, or our version. My husband really dislikes cucumber, so I tend to not make them with cucumber unless I happen to have some for me in the house. These will be bell pepper. I usually will use red bell pepper if I have one, but I didn't on this day. Avocado, roasted peanuts, and I usually add sesame seeds, and I didn't have any of those either. So these will be a little plain, but we have soy sauce, wasabi, and sushi ginger to go along with them. I do season the sushi rice. Usually I would use a rice wine vinegar, but I didn't have any, so this is white wine vinegar, some salt, and some sugar. I like using this little spatula spoon thing. I'm pretty sure it came with my Instant Pot. If I don't have any peppers at all in the house, I will use sliced carrots. That's always a good addition. It's very crunchy and good, especially if you don't have peanuts to add on. We also made sweet potato french fries and added that because we've ordered those before from restaurants. I'm not a big fan of it though. So I just get everything put into kind of a row, and then I use this little bamboo mat to roll them up. When I was first starting to make these, I think I started with the rice on the inside, but then I don't like the texture of the nori on the outside, so I prefer to roll it with the rice on the outside. Then at the ends, it's usually gappy, I would say, and so I will put some of the sticky rice in there, or if I have extra avocado, I will push that into the ends just so that piece on the end holds together better. So that's the wasabi I just put on there. There's already some ginger and soy sauce, and this was my plate. It was really good, but it does take a lot of time. While I was editing this video, I was really craving especially the soups that I had made. I really enjoyed having the soup with pasta. It was very delicious, and the rice soup is always great. I'm planning to do another pantry challenge either January or February, and hopefully that video will be out towards the beginning of the year. As always, thanks for watching.